And so if you're living in so much excitement for life now, it doesn't matter what, or like what you're doing, then that is, you're a lucky individual.
Welcome to Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. I'm going to be here with Scott McGee, which I'm super excited about. It's a new conversation for us and really kind of a new type of guest for us. I've never had law enforcement on here, so I'm super excited about that. So I'll give his intro in just a second. Before I forget, make sure you go to maxoutman.com, go to maxoutmanpodcast.com. You can listen to all the podcast episodes. Really appreciate it if you would rate and review. That helps us kind of grow this podcast and reach more people. We also have at maxoutman.com some courses, done for you stuff, coaching, all sorts of things. And I do want to mention, and I have been mentioning this the last few podcast episodes, but we're thinking about doing an event in Costa Rica. Honestly, at this point, we don't have a lot of plans around it. No definitive dates, sometime in the fall, maybe. But if you're interested in that, shoot me an email, katie@maxoutman.com. So, hey, let me give Scott's bio here, a little bit of a blurb. Scott's a dedicated family man and committed law enforcement officer who brings the same passion to his roles as coach and podcaster. As a wellness coach, he empowers others to live healthier, more balanced lives. Scott is a mindful warrior. I want to talk about what that means. On a path of gratitude and service, continually striving to make a positive ripple effect in his community. Dude, I'm so excited to have you on here. My youngest daughter is a paramedic. So, and then I have my daughter-in-law is in the Army. And so like this whole first responder military thing, like I have a real heart for that. And so I'm super excited to have you on and share your story, not only from the law enforcement side, but then taking into coaching and wellness and all that. So thanks for coming.
Hey, it's my honor, brother.
Hey, so I gave kind of your blurb. What I like to ask for is just if you give us the background of kind of who you are, how you got where you are. And honestly, we got time. So take as long as you want, go as in depth as you want. But that way we can lay the foundation for everything that you're doing right now.
Well, thank you. First of all, every time I have to like write something or listen to a bio or anything, it always makes me uncomfortable. Part of the reason is I always feel that we are so much more than our resumes. Mm-hmm. Our resumes don't tell the correct picture. I think really what we are, what we've overcome, not necessarily defined by all the successes and it's almost like an Instagram feed of your life where it's just showing a bunch of awesome stuff, but it's not really showing the real.
Right.
However, I feel very lucky, man. I've had tremendous amount of opportunities presented throughout my life. I grew up in Santa Monica, or was in the west side of LA. Had a little sister, a family, parents married. That's I'm sure they stayed together, and that's part of defining who I am. My dad was involved in sports and coaching, which laid some foundations for me. Mom was involved in schools and clubs and helped me with homework. So right away, I didn't realize it at the time, but now as a parent, I really understand the importance of that foundation. Mm-hmm. And not only just the foundation, but the unspoken stuff of being the role model and how they presented themselves and how that's impacted how I am raising their grandchildren. And so I take that into account a lot now in how I'm living and how I treat my kids and the kids that I coach. And I'm demonstrating to them how to be a coach and a parent. And I'm grateful for the foundation I had. So much love to my parents. And then, man, sports and school, growing up in clubs. And then, of course, you have the ups and downs in life. I went to college, played sports there. There's a moment in time in college, and this is another little pivotal moment, and I'm sure a lot of people have gone through this, but we tend to have, or at least I did, attach ourselves to certain identities. And for me, it was, I played football in college, and that was a big identity for me, is who I play football on weekends, and I practice, and then I sometimes go to school. So that part was great. Playing sports is obviously I'm a huge fan of and what it does for a person. But there was a point in time where I blew out my hamstring really bad. Couldn't use my leg. I had to take a year off and went through some depression at that time. I got really good at drinking the champagne and beers, Miller High Life, because the liquor store down the street was cheap. And started gaining some weight. I lived with football players, and it was during the season, so they were gone. And the what isn't really the important part. It was just to crack an identity. And then if I wasn't doing that thing, then really who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And so I went through some depression. And then eventually my dad ended up giving me a book by Pat Croce. And if you don't know who he is, he's like a rags to riches kind of guy that eventually started his own physical therapy practice, made a bunch of money, ended up buying a basketball team. Just a self-made, self-driven, no excuses, I'm going to make my own reality kind of guy. And that kind of kicked me in the butt. I joined basically an AA meeting for injured athletes.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, and more on that maybe will come up later. And then, I came to a certain point in time, and I don't know if, to me, it's like a point where people grow up, and not everyone goes through this process, but it hit me that like my predicament and where I was not a victim. And for a long time before that, I was acting like a victim. Like it was the physical trainer's fault, or they didn't prepare me right, or whatever it was. And then I had this whole process that I went through and learned that everything in my reality is up to me. And that completely empowered me, put the power back in my hands. And I started realizing that I started paying attention to nutrition for the first time, to hydration for the first time, paying attention to sleep, and all kinds of decisions that I was making on the daily. And the process of like, is this going to move me closer or farther away from my goals?
Mm.
So taking that kind of ownership of my life to me is like probably one of the biggest moments that of growth. And I say that growing up because I started really diving into accountability and responsibility and that kind of stuff. And then, I came back. It was a great opportunity to come back fitter and stronger and faster than I ever was. And, since then, hasn't changed. Like I refuse to be. And so the mindful warrior part kind of comes into that play of refusing to be a victim and knowing that everything that happens, I have some say so in it. And if I don't, then I have a say so in how I choose to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you bounce around through life and you have opportunities to feel bad for yourself or complain or anything like that. But that's where all that mindful warrior stuff comes in, because within those moments, the biggest battle's in between your ears.
Yeah, right. And was that a one-time kind of life split right there? Whenever, I assume you're like early 20s at that point? Or have you continued to have those little diversions over time? I'm 51, so I find over my life, I can point to different kind of forks in the road, and they're not always like major, like, all right, here's where I started, now here's who I am. But have you found that over time kind of doing the same thing as you continue to grow? Or was it like, all right, well, I'm this guy and this is my identity, and now I'm going to shift to this identity and move forward?
It's those moments. That's what I was talking about. Like it's not the resume, it's those moments in time, right? That's what really defines us. And for me, there's been a whole bunch of them. We really went back down a little bit further. I remember there's a specific moment in 5th grade where I decided that I was no longer going to have my mom help me with my homework.
Mm.
That was it. I was like, no, I'm going to do my own homework. I remember it's weird. It's a weird memory.
That is, yeah.
It is a weird memory, but at that point in time, that was it. Like I studied myself. I had paid attention to the instructions, and I did it myself. It was just a decision. So that moment, like this moment in college, and there's been more, but the thing is, I always feel like we're constantly growing. Like I mean, maybe some people are the same as they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but constantly growing and evolving, and then evaluating what your most important role in your life is. 15 years ago, I was not a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so my life now is in how I wanted to be one. That's a different story. Like always, I'm picturing what I have now. But constantly growing, like water. Water can move into ice. It can be a wave. It can be a calm river, and just always adjusting. I think there is some benefit to having that type of philosophy, because if you're rigid within your expectations of life or within yourself, you can cause some dissonance, and that dissonance can create some internal suffering.
Yeah, and it almost seems like there's almost two paths. There's either rigidity or what, and I don't know if laziness is the right word, but it's maybe complacency, right? Like, especially I see, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to lean into Maxed Out Man for men my age, and also we're kind of transitioning and adding more of the younger guys too. But like, if you're in your 40s and 50s and nothing has really changed in your life for the last, to use your term, timeline, 15 years, there's a complacency involved. You're gaining an extra couple of pounds a year. You're more stressed than ever. Your relationships aren't improving, those kind of things. And it seems like that those two sides of that coin kind of act almost it seems like I meet both types,
Yeah, but there's also like, if there's a component of I don't want to say not quitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you talk about complacency, and just because you're 40 or 50 or 80, in my opinion, you shouldn't stop having like moments of awe.
Yeah, 100%.
And the moments of awe, like for kids, everything is amazing to them, and they're constantly learning. They're getting new habits, new hobbies. They're doing different sports, trying to play music instruments. They're constantly learning. And to me, there's really like no reason for whatever your age is. In fact, it's probably more important for us as we get older to continue that type of living.
Yeah, neuroplasticity and all that stuff, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Continue to study. Pick a topic and go read about it. Especially with YouTube, you can pick up a ukulele and start teaching yourself how to play a few instruments.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of things, and then all kinds of like moments of awe to create that makes your life a little bit more full. And at the same time, there's a really collateral benefit there, because you are starting to regulate your emotions by stabilizing your attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's another. You stabilize your attention, it helps you regulate your emotions. It doesn't matter what the thing is. Like, just go to the store and get a canvas for $15 and do a painting.
Yeah.
Push yourself. So
I love it. And that's physically, mentally, spiritually, everything together. I've had one of my early episodes with a guy named Fred Neth, and he's 92 years old. He's my neighbor, pastor for 40 years, but he's like, I know that winter's coming because he has a truck of logs delivered to the house. Like, they're like 40-foot logs. And his deal is he goes and uses a tank of gas every day on his chainsaw. That's how he cuts those up, and he splits them and all that stuff. And so that's that physical activity, but he also reads, in his case, it's reading his Bible or other spiritual books every single day. And so I look at him, and then I have other people in their 60s or 70s that literally, I'm like, are you just at this point waiting to die? Like, I can never wrap my mind around just that, sitting and not wanting to learn new things or not wanting to do more things or stay active or whatever. And it's, I don't know if it's a lack of empathy for that or just not fully understanding.
Well, probably a little bit of both. Obviously, you have to, because whatever the habit is, it will snowball.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone has a job, they work really hard for a long time, and next thing you know, they're always looking towards the end of, like, towards retirement. They want to do nothing. And then you start doing nothing, and then what ends up happening? Like, that becomes your habit.
Yeah.
There's also, I don't know if a lot of people are aware of the actual like blood chemistry and the brain changes and what happens in these type of habits.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have self-awareness so that you can self-regulate yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to go back to the point of like all these little life events and these growth opportunities, even how like I behave or how I react to it. I always think of like, it's kind of hard to, I'll try and explain, but I can show you, like, let's just say here's the path,
Mm-hmm.
right? The perfect path of the like mindful warrior or like the maxed out man, here it is. But that staying on this path is not a reality.
No,
It's not. And that's another thing that we have to have an agreement with ourselves over. You have to understand that this is the expectation, but it's not the reality. And so you can travel and maybe on like, this is the path. You're kind of like, I'm on it. Oh, I'm off. And it's a big turn. Oh, I'm on it, but I'm off in this kind of style. But over time, with constant work and dedication to it and understanding that reality is what it is, you start to kind of turns are a little shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that to me is comes down to like the personal responsibility, accepting what is in your control and what is not, and understanding that the further like your own expectations is what causes the suffering. And the further your expectations are from reality, there's a more opportunity for there to be some type of suffering.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. That's part of it. Like I see a lot of people struggling, and it's usually them versus them, not with the actual opportunity they have. Or they're viewing, or they're focusing on the pain, and they continue to suffer instead of focusing on the lessons so you can continue to grow. And those are two different paths as well.
Yeah, because it's all where your focus is, 100%. And I like that metaphor when you're talking about the path that you're on, right? It makes me think of, I grew up in Oklahoma, boating, all of that stuff. And it was funny because like, and this is a totally weird example, but I was actually sitting in our swimming pool yesterday in a little raft, and I'm thinking about some different things. But then I literally just gently pushed off the wall of the pool, and I just moved, right? Like it was a weird thing to strike me, but I was like, it struck me that it takes so little effort to make such a big change. And I think ships and boats are the same way. Very minor corrections along those paths, it can take you in a huge direction one way or the other, or constantly making small corrections keeps you going in a straight line.
Mm-hmm. And that little push is can also be a decision, right?
Yeah.
It's how you decide to make a change or decide to view something or sometimes decide not to do something.
Yeah. One of my business coaches calls that an integrity issue. So he talks about the integrity that you have with yourself, which is like, am I going to work out today? What kind of relationships am I going to have today? How I'm going to serve my family and community and all of those things. But he talks about it in terms of an integrity issue, basically integrity with ourselves.
Yep. That's the biggest challenge, right?
Doing what you say you're going to do, right?
Yeah, but there's that, like, what is you? Because we all have a negative thought bias on how we look at things, and that's just a normal human reaction. But we also have that internal dialogue. You can call it the angel and the devil, or whatever you want to call it. You always have the little, let's just call it the devil, that's always whispering into your thoughts. And he's so clever and charismatic, rationalizes everything. But no, you worked out hard yesterday. You deserve a rest day. Or, oh, it's just one day. It's okay. Like, you deserve to go, I don't know, whatever. That little voice is always happening. Always happening.
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask you, so one of the things that, and if I'm interested in your law enforcement career too, but I want to talk about this Sisu ideology. I don't know whether it's a methodology, ideology, practice, however you describe that, but can you just until we were introduced, I'd never heard of it. So I'm going to assume that most people have it that are listening to this. So if you can explain that, I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, the word, it's a Finnish word, Sisu, Sisu. And it would probably take 2 pages of notes to actually explain in English.
Mm.
Fascinating word. It's been one of my favorite words for like a long time. And the closest word that I can think of in English to it is probably grit. We might not know, for example, like Rocky had Sisu.
Mm.
It's like strength and determination in the face of adversity. It's perseverance. It's having an unconquerable soul. It's that type of desire to, no matter what, to withstand. And so to have that type of, and the desire to fight. And I say that also is, I want to highlight that desire to fight doesn't necessarily mean always taking up arms. It also is having the strength and wisdom to know when not to. And so having that type of path or that way, it's been a big part of my life for a long time. Highlighted, important time in my life where my dad was going through cancer. And there's like this whole idea of like when you're faced with a life or death situation in cancer, like, and choosing to fight that, or is something that, there's a part of like a human character. Let me rephrase, because I'll get to the cancer part. Part of the human character that I always like love to see, and it's that triumph of the human spirit. And there are certain moments that we've all seen it, and you see it when people are struggling to finish a marathon. You see it in when people are fighting through an actual fight, let's say, or they're in an Olympic event, or it's a sport, whatever it is. Sports highlights it because it gives a cute example of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you also see it, and my point being, you see it in people facing cancer. You see it in people, in battles. Doesn't matter what it is. When someone's facing some insurmountable challenge, the human spirit shines there. And so I wanted to capture something along those lines when I started developing like this little, I don't want to call it philosophy, but the Instagram account. I had a podcast going on it, and to highlight and bring that out in people, and then talk to people, and it's in those moments where people have shown Sisu that are these moments that we're talking about, and that's what really defines somebody and creates the person you see as you go and you talk to people. And generally speaking, the people who have been through a lot of those really hardships and let their spirit shine usually are the most compassionate and empathetic and strong people, because they've been broken strong. They've been broken down. They have cracks, and now that's how the light shines through. So that kind of stuff, and then like the little moments where when my wife was pregnant with our second son, there was those tests you get when you go, you're pregnant and you go get those blood tests, and they're like, we're not going to call you back, but if we find something, we will. And then, normally no one gets those calls, but we did, and had to go into the doctor's office, and at like 20 weeks, the kid had high drops, so his heart was enlarged, like 2/3 the size of his chest. He was anemic. He has his head swelling. There's tons of fluid in between the scalp and the skull. And we had to do all these testing, and bottom line, we had to come to a decision whether we were going to essentially abort or to go down a path of trying to keep him alive, and then thinking about the consequences of that. So we were told that there is an opportunity to do every 2 to 3 weeks an intrauterine blood transfusion.
Wow.
And so the way that looks like is they take this, it's like a surgery, but it's not the cutting people, but the syringe or the needle goes through the abdomen, into the womb, into a vein in the umbilical cord. And that's how they do a blood transfusion. So, and if we did that, they would do a blood transfusion. The reason being, like, there was something in his blood that my wife's immune system had antibodies for. So her immune system was attacking his ability to create red blood cells. So we had to keep putting different blood in to be able to keep him alive. And if we did that, there was a strong possibility of some type of like mental disorder, deaf, blind, like all of that list that you like, oh my gosh, please, like. But we decided to obviously fight through it. The first time we go in there, she got taken back, and hour or two later, I'm in the waiting room. The doctor's walking towards me, and he's got like 9 people with him. Like I'm like this is for support, or like they're here to protect the doctor in case he gets. I'm like, okay, like
there's a lot that could go through your head when you see that scene, I'm sure.
Yeah. So they come out, and the first thing they say that, hey, your son's alive, but we couldn't do the entire blood transfusion because his hemoglobin level was at a 2. And for some people out listening, they might know what that means, but basically his blood was like water. And prior to us even going there, my wife had thought he was already dead. She really just wanted to get there to get the ultrasound to see if he had a heartbeat. But the reason he was like that, turns out, is because his blood was so incredibly thin that he was probably a couple hours away from dying by the time we had this done.
Wow.
So they can only do half of it. So that car ride home, like we didn't really talk, you're staring out the window, like feels like you're underwater. We get home, we're feeling really bad. We're like it's not going to work. We're scared, and TV's on, but we're not watching it. We're like just staring at the wall. And then next thing you know, she like reaches over and grabs my arm and brings it over onto her stomach. And then it felt like to me like Leonidas doing like this is Sparta kick, boom, and kicks my hand. And that was the first time I'd ever felt him move. So at that point in time, it like, again, here we go. It lit me up. I'm like, that's it. We're going to make it. We're going to fight. And he's going to make it. He's got a strong will. And that was like the first time he had taught me a lesson in like not giving up, and like got me fired up and fired up that Sisu in me. And so that's a little tiny moment with him that brought out like the whole Sisu idea. And when I first made the Sisu Way poster, I had it up for him to see. And for me, during that process, for me to see every time I walked out my door, to help me recalibrate into not being a victim, into fighting, into triumphing and not giving up, and having that type of that fortitude and that character and that grit and that perseverance. It's a fascinating word. So, I mean, there's a whole rabbit hole if anyone wants to go down and read about it.
Yeah, man, that's a lot. And what's funny, and I have so many questions, but I was going to ask before you told the story, and I'd never heard that story, was do you believe that Sisu is something that is taught or ingrained? And I'll use cancer as an example, or any major illness, right? So we all know people that happens to, and they're bound and determined to fight it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the outcome will be the one that we all want, right? Which is healing and getting things back on track and remission and all those. But then we also know people that are just like, for whatever reason, they've already allowed it to win, like they don't even consider the fight. And so your example of your son would lead me to believe that in some people, for whatever reason, that it's almost like an innate trait. Or the other side of that question is, are we all born with it, but then somewhere along the line we lose it?
Well, for me to say that you're born with it and it can't be taught, it almost fires me up and gives me like a little, pisses me off a little bit, because then it says it's implying that it's not up to me.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, no, it's up to me. Like, however, I don't think it's a clean line, because you can say like some people are just naturally physically strong without working out. And then some people have to train hard and do work to get strong. Doesn't mean, so which one's strong?
Mm-hmm.
So there's also the opportunities that come up. Not everyone goes through struggles the same as other people.
You know, I've been super blessed to be able to feed into the lives of tons of men from all around the world and all walks of life. And I'm very excited to announce that I do have a couple of spots available right now. If you're interested in working with me, and we can talk about pretty much anything: marriage, business, fitness, parenting, being a dad, dogs, cars, whatever you want to talk about, I'm available to do that. We want to focus on the things that may be most beneficial to you and some things that you may not even know would be beneficial to you. You've listened to the podcast, you kind of know my style. If you are interested in working with me, I want to try to make it as simple as possible, but I also want to make sure we're a good fit. Send an email to coaching@maxoutman.com and just give me 2 pieces of information: why you would like to work with me and what that might mean for you, what things you would hope to accomplish by meeting with me. That'll kick off the process. I'll reach back out to you. We can jump on a call and see whether or not it would be a good fit. So go to maxedoutman.com, coaching@maxedoutman.com. Send me an email with those 2 pieces of information, and we'll see if it's a good fit. And I hope it is, and I hope that we can actually connect.
And so if you're living in so much excitement for life now, it doesn't matter what, or like what you're doing, then that is, you're a lucky individual.
Yeah. And isn't it weird how we all are so sure that there is that future, right? And it's probably the least sure thing, especially in a job like you have, which is, you know, highly dangerous and you know, obviously there's training, but that's a very dangerous occupation. But I heard someone describe that light at the end of the tunnel as sometimes a train. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. You got to be careful what you wish for. In that case.
Yes, yeah, and that's a whole big, gigantic concept for me. The concept of memento mori, in Latin, translates remember that you will die.
Mm.
And people are like, "Oh my gosh, that's depressing." I'm like, no, it's not. That's not the point. It's having that flicker of light that everything can come to an end, and it makes you really appreciate the now. You really appreciate what you have. You appreciate your health. To me, it's amazing to feel normal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've been through some injuries. I've been through things where I couldn't stand up straight. I couldn't walk comfortably. Couldn't get off the toilet. There's been all kinds of funny things that have happened to me. Just the amazing ability to feel normal. And if people that have back injuries, they probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But just having an amazing appreciation for the opportunity that you have in the moments.
Yeah, I mean, even like working out, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. It's like someone jokes and said, "Hey, do you get sore when you work out?" My answer is, I started working out when I was 15, so I've actually been sore for like 36 years in a row. But it's that soreness and that tightness that reminds me that my body is building to make me stronger. And so that's actually, you know, and if you're a regular workout, you go a couple of weeks or 3 weeks or whatever or have an injury, you start to feel like kind of gushy or, you know, and it's mostly mental, but having that soreness and tightness is something that then translates to me, like it motivates me to keep pushing.
Yep.
And I think we have different moments in our lives that are like that mentally and emotionally too, it seems.
Well, that's what we're talking about as you get older. You have to continue to mentally train. Otherwise, your brain turns to mush.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, what is it that motivates people to not do that? Like in your experience, because I mean, people are coming to you, you're teaching them, you're coaching them, you know, what do you see a delineation between, all right, the people that are wanting to do it and the people that don't want to do it?
It depends on their level of how much they're letting that little devil whisper into their ears. If they're letting them rationalize into like, it's okay to do nothing. And for a while, I'm like, let me rephrase it. Sometimes it is okay to do nothing. I think it's absolutely necessary. That's where some of the
rest.
Yeah,
rest is definitely important. Yeah.
Like you have to be, there's two sides of that to a coin where you have to be skilled in action, but you also have to be skilled in non-action. And so, for example, like you have to take some time off from exercise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that doesn't mean it's a tactical move. Basically, it's like you're letting your nervous system react, and then also having awareness of what that does to your blood chemistry and how you can create cancer within yourself. And that's a whole other thing to finding balance. But I think I want to go back also because I think it plays into here that some people might have certain things in their blood, like there's this chemical neuropeptide Y that some of the special forces folks will measure and it's like used for evaluations on how resilient and gritty and how energized they are towards their skills. You take like a Kobe Bryant and compare him to the rest of the league. Like what exactly can you measure that in his blood chemistry?
Mm-hmm.
And what is in people? I don't know. Thirst for life. It's something they've been taught, or maybe models they have seen. Again, it's like it's pretty easy to let yourself stop growing. It's an easy thing to do, and that's where momentum and desire and drive come in.
Yeah, and it's funny like that. You know, you can start at any time. I think that there's this like, it's too late, I'm too old, I'm too far gone ideology is something that paralyzes so many people. When I was a personal trainer, I had a client of mine, and he's probably high 80s at the time we started training, and he could literally not get up off the floor. So he would have to do that old person kind of roll over on your side and all that. And after like 12 to 16 weeks, he came in, we did training 4 or 5 days a week, a lot of training. And, he was doing crunches and deadlifts and squats and like literally could like hop up off the floor. And it's like, it's never, your body wants that movement. Your mind wants that learning. It's never too late to start or to, go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah. Well, you have to have the self-awareness so you can self-regulate it. I don't know if we're necessarily taught the dangers of our culture of sitting for long periods of time. And even the idea of retirement, like you're supposed to go and hang out and do nothing. You're not taught retirement. Okay, good. Go find some hobbies. That's not part of the culture.
Yeah.
Right now, and that's something that we have to, keep combating against. And it's like the big boat. You're not going to make big changes right away, but little incremental changes over time sets a different trajectory. And that comes into training.
Yeah. Or
bringing in the awareness to it. Yeah, the ability to get up and down is like, that's like it's like a weird thing, but to me, I celebrate it.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing. When I get out of bed and I can stand up and just start walking around, to me, that's like, I'm already like, I've celebrated my day already.
Right.
Like those little moments to me, and that's what fires me up. And I don't know, it helps me keep going.
Well, and that's that attitude of gratitude, right? Like it's literally like you're grateful for those things and those, in my nomenclature, it's blessings, right? Like I'm person of faith. And so it's like, hey, I see these blessings, and it's literally a blessing to be able to, like you said, get up out of bed and be able to walk, pick up my dog and walk her outside. She's a little dog. So walk her and toss her outside to go to the bathroom or whatever. Like that's a blessing to me versus so many different pathways that could have a different alternative, not least of which is that I could not wake up at all.
To me, that simple act is a form of art. It's a form, like you're in a flow, you're flowing, you have like arms to be able to pick your dog up. You have fingers and thumbs to put on a leash. Your dog is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You have the opportunity to have a dog. You might have a nice house to even have the ability to have a dog. You have a neighborhood, you have grass right in front of your door. Like that's amazing. A lot of people don't have grass right outside their front door.
Yeah.
Live in an apartment living. So on and so forth. I mean, the ability to hear sounds, like notice the trees on your block, ability to see colors, feel the wind on your cheeks. All of that stuff, I'm sure a lot of people might think this is nutty, but like, it's that type of stuff that really makes me rooted in the beauty of life. Simple things like that. And that type of stuff is what helps me stay out of cynicism, helps me stay out of depression. It helps me stay closer to my humanity. It helps me keep my smile. All of the things all comes down to simple gratitude practices.
And what does that practice look like? I mean, is that something that's almost like a ongoing meditative state? I mean, it's just like having the awareness. In my case, I live in Montana. I live 8 miles out in the country. I've got 5 acres. We have no noise here. Like it's like getting up in the morning, and this is my favorite time of year. We're recording this in mid-July. It's absolutely beautiful. The birds are singing. If there's a light breeze, a lot of times, and this is going to sound weird, but like I can smell the cows, right? Like there's cows that live behind my house, and most people be like, that's disgusting, but it's part of that. When I see, we have planes that spray, we have those old school crop dusters that come over. Like, it's like all of these little things that make me so thankful for the blessings of being able to live in a place that very few people have even visited, quite honestly, when I talk to people, like I've never been to Montana, but contrast that to like when it's 68 below zero in January, I have to then practice reminding myself that this enormous snowstorm has managed to make sure that we have moisture for the summer, because that's where most of our moisture comes from, or the ability to shovel snow, or all of those things. But is that something that you do? Like, what is that if someone's like, hey, I'd love to have that attitude, or I'd love to have that practice, how do they go about starting? Really, I guess is the easy question.
Well, it is a deliberate practice. I've been doing it long enough now that it's like kind of part of my behavior, but I still have to continuously do it when I feel myself getting upset or frustrated or disappointed or all those feelings that I don't want. Then I start like, I do my best. Okay, I'm having a negative thought. Let me replace it with 3 thoughts of gratitude. So whatever it is, oh, it's 68 degrees. So it's, okay, well, it's part of water. I'm awesome. I live in Montana. How cool and beautiful are these seasons? And then you start replacing that. And that's just, again, goes back to neuroplasticity. But gratitude practice can happen in a lot of different ways. It can just be something where you do a self body scan. You can be as simple as staring at your hand and be grateful for it. You can actually feel there's a type of like little meditation there, but sometimes I don't call it meditation because people have their own ideas of that, but just being grateful for the ability to use your thumbs or feel the heat in your hands. Like, this is an amazing piece of equipment, your hand.
Yeah.
And staring at it and being appreciative of it, or looking around and looking at something in nature, and you have a beautiful opportunity to do that, and just looking at a tree and thinking of how amazing it is and how amazing it is to see those colors. All of these, a lot of times my own personal gratitude practice comes down to my senses, because they are completely like within me. They're within my skeletal system. And so I like to have inside out appreciation for life instead of like attaching my gratitude for things.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, you can take away all the things, but like I'll still have my ability to move, or hopefully the ability to smell, to see, to hear. So that's where I go. That's where I have found my practice to be awesome and help me. The ability to hear my kids. For a long time, I just wanted to have the ability to hear my son cry. Like, I didn't think I'd have that ability to hear him cry at 3 a.m. And so now, he's 9. He just turned 9. Like, if him and his brother are fighting or somebody's crying, whatever annoying sounds they're making, I'll recalibrate and be like, oh, I remember a time I just wanted to hear him cry. And it helps me take care. Now that moment is framed differently. So it's not just having those appreciations, but also reframing things. And very deliberately, like, I guess an easy thing to do is pick something at some point part of the day and just think of 7 things you're grateful for. Or it could be 3 right before going to bed. Share 3 things that you're grateful for with somebody. Another fun practice I like to do is I'll open up my contacts list on my phone, and I'll pick a number like 8, and I'll do like 8 scrolls through my contact list, and whatever lands, I pick somebody in that list to send them a compliment about them. Because we always have these feelings about our friends, like, oh, you know what, he did awesome. I really appreciate how he is with his kids. Or this other person's like, I thought they were a fantastic coach this year. But a lot of times we just have those thoughts. We don't really do anything with them because it's not. So having that practice and then reaching out and telling them that. By the way, some amazing experiences come out of this, because the responses you get from people lead to all kinds of things. In fact, anyone listen, try doing it. Just do it 3 times. Pick the numbers like 5, 7, and 11. Just let it drop and send somebody a random compliment. I do this with my kids at night. Like, before bed, I have them tell me 3 things they're grateful for. Besides the practice of it's kind of fun to hear what they tell me, it's also the practice of wiring their brain to have that type of growth mindset. And there are physical changes to the brain to have a gratitude practice. Like, it's not just like, I tell people, it's not just a thing to feel good. You're building a neural network of grit and resilience and appreciation for life. I do the same thing at red lights. For me, if I'm at a red light, it's a reminder. Okay, what are you grateful for? You probably don't have red lights out there.
We do. Yeah, not a lot.
But, and the reason I'm saying all this stuff, and I compare it because people will have to go to some place where you're at to help them recalibrate. I live in LA. I'm close to LAX. So there's the earth is suffocated by concrete and pollution, and there's constant noise and people and traffic and all of those things. So to have it is a constant practice because the environment that I'm in is not built to help me relax. It's not built for my wellness. So I have to have a practice to combat it. Otherwise, I become a victim, and then so much a victim that I'm not even aware that I've gotten grumpy and cynical and depressed.
Yeah, but I mean, to that point, though, I think it's actually, sadly, it's also easy for me to do that same thing here and take it for granted. You take for granted the quiet and beauty and serenity and all those things. But you drop me in the middle of LA, which I've got a lot of Southern California friends, and I can't wait to go. Can't wait to get out. So it would be, but all that to say, I should be practicing in the same way here as I do, as I would there when I visit. And I think that's awesome. I love that contact idea. That's a super, because I'm one that over the last couple of years, I've really, really tried to tell my friends, especially my guy friends, I love you. I appreciate you. You mean this to me in my life. This is something I'm proud of I'm proud of you for, those kind of things. But I've never thought about the randomization of doing that. And so I'm going to try that today. I think that's super great.
There is massive power in random compliments, especially somebody you haven't talked to in like 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
You got to push yourself. You're going to land on some stuff and you're like, and then try to avoid it.
Yep.
But that's part of it. And also going back to the point of something that fires me up is the strength from the inside out, gratitude from the inside out. To me, like that type of practice, it doesn't matter where you put me. I'm going to have it in Montana, or in LA, in a jail cell, in a POW camp. That's where a lot of the stuff comes from, reading some of the, like Frankel's book. It's not the environment. It has to come from the inside.
Yeah. And not the situation, right? Like I've read some of those POW stories, and the ones that survive, thrive, and then live a happy life over time are the ones who had that, it's the grit, the sisu, but it's also like finding this contentment and joy regardless of the situation that you're in. I think that's a lot of what comes from gratitude is joy and contentment too. And man, I think that's just awesome stuff.
And if we go a little bit further and we start undressing all that stuff, it comes down to love.
Mm-hmm.
That's what helped Franco and his love for his wife. I don't know if you know the story of Louis Zamperini.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Love, right? Gratitude, all that stuff, like is it's not like a foo-foo word. To me, it is a true warrior word.
Yeah.
And love is like a word, like you mentioned, like mentioning your buddies, you love them. Love to me is not like a bad word.
Right.
It's not like a insecure word. It's the most powerful word. If you think to like what we do and what behaviors humans do, it comes down to love. Sometimes love of money or love of your brother. Love's super powerful.
Yeah. And it's funny. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but I have a friend of mine that would say, "Hey man, I love you, man, but not in a weird way." Right. And so that became like this joke, but it was a little sad in one way, but it was also like, all right, so that's the way that he's able to express, that feeling without being weird about it, which to me, it's less weird than it ever has been. But love is we've done a lot of marriage ministry and marriage, premarital counseling and all that stuff. And we've been through our own marital challenges, which we actually Sunday, which is 2 days from now, 29 years, I've been married. And so, but we always use the phrase love is a choice, right? Like love is an active word. You have to do, it's a practice also. So I think and to your point, it is the most powerful emotion that we have, I think.
Yep. Yes. And it's something, again, especially with men, that to fight through and realizing that vulnerability is strength. And it actually is like the strongest and most masculine thing you can do is to be yourself. You don't need to hide it. You don't need to hide it behind a mask and pretend to be something you're not.
Yeah.
That's a little bit, I don't want to say a coward, but there's no courage and honor in that.
No, putting on the mask and pretending to be someone else. We went to a men's conference at the beginning about a month ago, and I'm not really a crier. Like, I don't cry a lot. But during this conference, there was a bunch of different crazy things that happened. And I actually cried in front of like 40 guys like 3 times. And I was talking to one of the younger guys about this, and he's like, man, I have not seen a more masculine display than seeing a guy, because I have a physicality about me. I tend to be a little bit over the top and that kind of thing. But to see that vulnerability to him was more of showing more because we were talking about masculinity at the time. But it's showing that vulnerability is where the masculinity and the strength really came through. Yeah. So
you were feeling a certain way. Feel it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the funny thing is like you're trying to hide something and pretend to be something. I always ask, I was like, what's tough about that? Like, that's the easy path. The easy thing to do is that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you can put on different identity. You can be something, not that you're not. You don't have to be honest and all that, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's be proud of who you are. Right? That's like a thing for me.
I love it. Well, Scott, I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you being here. We didn't get into anything that I had on my list, so that's awesome. I always like it. I always like it when it goes that way. So maybe I have to have you back again. But hey, if people want to learn more about what you've got going on, find out more about you, reach out to you, how they do that?
Probably the easiest thing is on Instagram, just at Scott McGee, MCGEE. Pretty receptive there to direct messages. On there also, I have the Sisu Way podcast. There is an Instagram account for that. One thing also to look out for coming up December, we do this thing called the Character Mile. And that's we do a complete 1 mile every day during the month of December. It's funny, like that thing started, I tried to get like a handful of friends to do it with me. And so far it's spread to 14 different countries. And it's just an awesome thing. So you guys will see what I'm talking about if you go looking. You look up that hashtag. But yeah, at Scott McGee, please reach out, follow the account. I leave a bunch of cool notes and thoughts on that. And yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome, man. Well, the best part about this podcast is learning from other people and making new friends. And so I'm super excited to continue that. And I thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, brother.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.